Good afternoon, Rhode Nation. We're back. Another week, another episode of Marks and Marks here on WRIU 90.3 FM. I'm your host, Mark Radigan, and I'm thrilled to be joined by one of my close friends here in URI Athletics, one of the guys I really try to gravitate toward with the camera when I'm working with URI Men's Soccer as one of my new sports media endeavors as the team photographer for URI Men's Soccer this year. I'm joined by starting goalkeeper for the Rams, Edu Rodriguez. Edu, how are we doing today?
I'm doing good, Mark. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure. Big fan. Watched a lot of them, so it's great to be here.
It's awesome. I love having the soccer guys come on. I had a bunch of them on last year, Season 2 and Season 3. I actually finished Season 3, bringing Connor Froberg on. That was awesome. So I love getting you guys to come on my show, and I work with you guys so often. So it's I love hearing all of the stories and learning so much about you, and I feel like that people at home and people that that are in the URI community that are fans of URI Athletics deserve to learn more about you guys and the journeys that you've had, because it's very interesting, and we're going to get into yours very quickly because yours is very particular. Those that have listened to my show for the past few months may remember when I had Rafa Villanueva on, another Spaniard, one of the many Spanish players that have come through the ranks of URI Men's Soccer, and Edu is also one of them, hailing from Madrid, Spain. And so, I kind of want to just get into it right there. Coming over from Spain, that's a very big decision for any person to move from one country to another, to move from your home to thousands of miles away. Yes. To make that decision to pursue an education while continuing to play the sport that you've played your entire life. I learned a little bit about it when I was talking with Raf, but break it down for me. How did it start for you?
Well, I think you said it. It's playing the sport you love while at the same time getting an education. I feel like in Spain it's very separate, where you play your sport and there's institutions that get you your degree. There's universities that work completely separate from what you do in your sport, and you might be at a higher level where you're training in the mornings or where you're traveling for a game. And then you go tell your professor, hey, I might not be able to make it to this test. What can we do? And they're like, well, unlucky, you have a 0 on the test. And then you tell your coach, hey, I have this test. And it's well, if you don't come to practice, there's a big chance you're not playing. So I think for me, that decision was, I don't want to give away any of the two things that I'm doing. I don't want to give away soccer. That's a sport I love and I've been playing for my whole life. And I don't want to give away studying. I don't want to give away getting my education. I'm young. So I think for me, although it wasn't expected, it was a great opportunity that I just took. I didn't look back.
And so when you actually started playing soccer, because it's a way of life out there, just as it is for football or baseball in the U.S., soccer is a way of life in Spain. Getting into the sport, was goalkeeping always something that you gravitated towards, or was it one of those things where you started another position, realized you were good with your hands, and kind of moved into that?
Yeah, well, I want to make it clear, I was never the chubby kid. I was never in goal because I was you're a little chubby, you're going in goal. I want to get that stereotype out of the way. Not all goalkeepers were chubby as kids. So it's a crazy story, actually. I feel like when you're a kid, everyone just plays everywhere. And I think I must have been 7 or 8. I started early. Some people started quite later. But we were in practice, and it was my time to go in goal. And I think my grandma was picking me up that day for practice. And I did okay. I guess I did well. I don't remember. But I remember my teammates coming to me and being like, oh, you did so good. Maybe it's because they didn't want to see me in the field anymore. I don't know. But then my grandma came to me and she was like, oh, that was you in goal. You look like Iker Casillas in there. And that's something that stuck with me. And so the next day I showed up to practice. I got my parents to buy me these gloves. And I was like, I'm the goalkeeper now. And that's kind of where it started. And I've always played goalkeeper since I'm 7 from there.
That's awesome. Getting compared to Iker Casillas as a Real Madrid fan must have been nice.
Exactly. It was my idol. I was like, really? Okay. Then I'm never looking back, never playing in the field again. Just pick up those gloves and go from there.
So how did it begin in terms of clubs, and where did you play? Did you join an academy team for one of the major Spanish teams, or were you playing at a local club? How did that start?
So when you're young, I feel like you start playing in your local clubs, and I got lucky enough that I was playing at higher levels when I was younger. So I was playing for the team in my neighborhood, and then I moved around a little bit when I realized, well, actually, when I was playing for my school, for my high school, and that's for my high school and primary education, something like that, I got scouted by Real Madrid when I was 10 or 11, and I didn't make it. They sent a letter saying no one made it. Some kids did, but I guess that's what they tell people in order not to get too upset. But I kind of realized that I might had some sort of talent. So I was lucky enough that some teams close to where I lived were playing at a high level for my age, like 11, 12, 13. So I started playing there. And then I got scouted by Getafe, which is an academy of a first division team. I was playing there, and then after a few seasons, we didn't do very well. Personally, I had a couple bad games where like I lost my starting job. And towards my last years, before I was 18, I decided to leave Getafe and go to a smaller club that was also playing at a high level, that I could also get minutes at, like not professional, but amateur, and play with the over 18, and I think that was a great move for me as a kid or as a younger guy. I value playing, and the goalkeeper position is that kind of position where it's either you play or you don't. And I was in that situation in Getafe where I had to make the decision of, okay, am I going to be the tail of the lion, or do I want to be the head of the rat? Kind of like, okay, I'm not going to be in an academy anymore, but I'm going to be playing in some smaller team, and at least I'm going to get that recognition that I wanted, get those minutes, get that experience. So I guess that's kind of my career. It was playing for high school, then going to an academy, and then going back to still high level, but not academy anymore.
And so as you made that transition from high school to professional academy, just varying across different levels, the stereotype with American sports is that like you can always have competitive sports that go along with your education, whereas in Europe that's not really as common. How competitive was it playing for your high school, primary school team, and then making the jump to then going to play at the much higher level? Like, was it a very wide gap? Was it smaller? Just like kind of illustrate that.
Well, I mean, it still was a similar level because, like I said, I was lucky enough that some teams in my neighborhood or around where I lived were playing. I was playing as Getafe before going there, but it clearly is different, especially because you see the older guys. You see I trained with the first team a couple of times. As a goalkeeper, you kind of get moved around because your position is so specific. So whenever there's a goalkeeper needed, they just go down to the academy. So it was a crazy level difference to see. And it's not only level. I feel like the mentality, it's also very different. You see those guys in practice and they play like they hate each other. They play every practice like they have $1 million on the line. And I don't know if they did, but it was insane to see it, like the competitiveness, like how people would get mad after losing a small-sided game in practice, where like before I was just like, people lose, it's fine. But for them, when they're losing, it's their life and they're playing for their job. So I think that was interesting to see and interesting to experience that sort of mentality and how professional people think, and people that want to be professional that are not there yet. But yeah, it's an interesting experience for sure.
During that point, was there like a moment where you kind of had a realization that you wanted to then pursue other things outside of playing professionally?
Mm-hmm. Yes, so it's very hard to make it. Like I said, I've played with a lot of guys that were almost there, and then at the end of the day, they don't make it. I realized there's more to life than just the sport you love, and I think it's great to do everything you do. I have a philosophy that whatever you do with passion. So if I'm going to play soccer, every time I'm in there, I want to give 100%. I want to play like it's my last game. But at the end of the day, there's more life to it. And it took me a while to realize. When I was younger, like soccer was my life. Like school, I didn't care about it. Like everything else, it was just soccer. But as I got older, I realized that it's a very unforgiving game, that it gives you a lot of goods, but it also gives you a lot of bads. And it's good to kind of stay in the middle, not focus on the good too much, not focus on the bad too much. Just like don't have highs that are too high and don't have lows that are too low. So I don't know, maybe the moment I realized is probably when I came to the US. Like for me, it was soccer, and then kind of leaving Europe, which is where the soccer is, to come to the US. For me, it was like, okay, let me still focus on soccer, but also try to get an education at the same time.
And so then how did that decision come about to go from Spain to the United States to pursue an education while still playing soccer? Was that a difficult one to grasp? Was it were you consciously trying to do that in order to like balance the education and athletics? Like, did you have opportunities to get a good education out in Spain?
So, not a lot of people know this, but so I started studying engineering back in Spain. So I was playing soccer at the highest level of under 19 and doing engineering. Engineering, for those people that don't know, it's a very demanding degree. I don't know why I chose that. I guess because I heard like people get paid a lot, but it was too much. Like I would wake up 6:30 a.m., get on the metro, for 1 hour and a half, go to school, then eat somewhere, then go to practice, spend 5 hours there, get home at 11, and then study. And it was never my idea to go to the U.S. I've heard of people that were doing it. I was like, I'm never going there. Like, I'm happy here. My family's here. And I got a text once of one of the agencies. They were like, oh, you want to come to the U.S.? And I kind of ignored it. And I was in the metro like a couple weeks later. And I was so fed up with the whole situation. I was so stressed. It was so much. And I responded to the guy. And then we started talking. And then the whole process came where like I started talking to schools. I started thinking that it could be a good idea. And that's kind of how it happened. It was me out of frustration being like, okay, let me listen to what this guy has to say. And I liked it. And it's been 6 years now. So I guess it was a good decision.
Yeah, clearly. And so as that process was kind of unfolding, the agency's explaining to you just what your options are, where in the U.S. you might want to go. How much of, like, obviously you've got a choice in deciding what institution you want to play for and so on. But, like, as you were going through that process, how much of a decision did you have in terms of, like, all right, what type of schools you were looking at, what schools were you speaking to, and just kind of, like, what was everything like once the ball was rolling and you were like, all right, I'm coming to the U.S. and now we've got to like figure out where I'm going to go, where I'm going to play?
Yeah. So for me, I had no idea of how college soccer worked. So like some coaches would talk to me and I lost the WhatsApp conversations and I forgot some of them. I remember I was talking to Stetson. I was talking to some other schools. For me, a big factor was coming from another country where the economic resources are not that big and people are not willing to spend as much in college, was obviously the money I was getting paid to study because I don't have the means to study a career in the U.S. But I had no idea. I was like, I'm just going to go wherever I feel like it's a good place, where I can feel I can get a good education, and wherever I think the soccer level is good. So I would watch their games. I would watch what they were doing. I would see like where they were ranked like in their conference. But as far as like what conference is good, what teams are good, I had no idea of anything. I just kind of learned through the whole experience.
Interesting. I mean, that's sort of the same story you hear from a lot of people that are coming over through these sorts of agencies, because when you look at it in terms of recruiting in the United States, it's very clear cut. Like the top programs are looking for the best players and trying to find the best players that fit their system, but also the best high school players. And it's pretty easy, like you see with every other American sport, all of the rankings and so on. But when it comes to European players, like, yeah, you're still looking at that with like in terms of talent, but I feel that you see so many excellent European players playing for maybe lower level college sides, if that makes sense. And not for a lack of them being not good. It's just that there's so much more to that decision than just going to play for the best program. It's like, all right, where am I comfortable playing as an international student? The education means a lot more to me than it might maybe to an American student. And so it's always neat to see those sorts of like intricacies when these decisions are made.
It's also like, I don't know for other people, but for me, like English wasn't my strong suit. Like obviously after 6 years, I kind of learned how to speak, but when I came here, I couldn't speak as well as I can right now. I could barely understand people. So it's also like you want a school that is treated international as well, that has some internationals that you can talk to or kind of can mentor you along the way. And so I think that's also important. I feel like if you're at a really big school, it's hard to get around. Like you have a school with 40,000 people, like it can get really lonely, especially for a foreigner. So I think that also plays a part into some of the foreigners' decision being somewhere that they know there's internationals, they know how to deal, the coaches and the professors know how to deal with internationals. So I think that also helps in when you have to make the decision.
Yeah, so then touching down in the U.S. was Campbell was the first one, right?
Yes.
And so just that decision to decision to go to Campbell. Campbell, not a incredibly massive program, just as a university, their athletics are a little bit smaller. They actually just played you or I in football last week.
They did.
But just walk me through that decision, like those conversations with your coaches and the decision to ultimately go to Campbell over all the other ones that you were looking at.
Well, for me, was the soccer was good. It was in North Carolina, so it was in the East Coast. I kind of like the East. I kind of gravitated towards the East Coast a little bit, just because it's closer to where I'm at. So if something happened in Spain, it's 6-7 hour flight. Whereas if I was in the West Coast, it would be like, I don't know, a long flight. So I kind of wanted to be close to my family. North Carolina's weather for me was a huge factor. It affects me a lot. I didn't think so. I was thinking like, yeah, the people that are affected by weather are like, they should just swallow it and just keep going with their day. But for me, like being somewhere like Minnesota, or like nothing against that, but it's just not for me. I can be in a place that's super cold and it's like snowing all day. So the weather, I knew the weather was good. I knew it was a small program, but I knew they had a lot of international guys and they had a good project. Like I remember, I would ask this question to most of the coaches I would go to. It was your expectations for the year? And most of them would be like, oh, win the conference or win this, and they just said like, we want to win the whole thing. And that for me was like, oh, you think you have a team to win the whole thing? Like there's some schools that are like, for my understanding, a lot bigger, and they're like, we have a good project going. We have some more experienced guys. We're bringing in a lot of talented players from other countries. So I think that's what convinced me. Soccer mainly, and I mean education as well. Like I was getting like good financial aid, so that's also played a big part in it.
Were there any other Spanish speakers that were already a part of the squad? Did any coaches speak Spanish?
So actually, it's funny. So my competition, his name was Samuel Lechuga. He was 23, so he was my age when I got there. So he was one of my best friends there. He was Mexican, and we're so close. He's hopefully getting married soon, and I'll be in his wedding. Like, he's one of my best friends till this day, and he really helped me a lot, kind of with learning English, understanding like how classes work, and kind of teaching me the ways, because I was going to be his successor, like in some way. So he was a great guy and a great person, and I think I'm so grateful to him, because if it wasn't for people like him that help international players that come in, and I try to do the same with Ini or Joanne that are coming in new, they don't speak the language, they don't understand how school works. So I try to be there for them, as well as Sam was there for me.
And just like getting acclimated with the squad, and you've got someone to kind of lead you down this sort of path. In terms of on the pitch performance, how was having him as sort of like a mentor to help you kind of get into the squad? How did that help you perform on the field?
So my first year, I was frustrated because I came to play, and all of a sudden I realized I'm 18 years old and there's this guy playing over me, and it doesn't look like I'm going to play at all. But I kind of fit into that role of like, okay, well, I'm young, I'm going to learn from this guy, I'm going to try to do my best in practice and try to make the coaches trust me, so when my time comes, I'm ready. But it was also tough, because coming from somewhere else, you don't know the language, you're not part of the team, you're not doing the sport you love. Kind of feels like you're making the wrong decision by leaving your country. But I don't know, I feel like if someone's listening that wants to come to the US, just know that it's not always easy, it's not always flowers. Like, you have to be ready to be alone, you have to be ready to sometimes feel like there's no one with you. But I think it also shows that it helps you get some sort of character and be like, okay, well, there's a situation now, what can I do to fix it? Let's not get down and be like, okay, like, I want to go back, I hate this. I'm big on, okay, there's a situation I have, how do I deal with it, how do I make it the best I can? So yeah, the first 2 years at Campbell, I played like maybe one game. I redshirted my first year, second year was COVID, but I don't know, I kind of fit in that role, and I was like, okay, when my time comes, I'm going to be ready.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I mean, you got your first year where it's like, yeah, you're not playing because you're just still lower on the totem pole and you got to work your way up. Second year, I mean, COVID just screwed everything up. And in that sort of situation where it's like, all right, you kind of understand what your situation is that first year, and it's like, you know what, like, I can accept that, that's fine. How did COVID impact that sort of mentality that you had, and how difficult was it to kind of, keep going in a way?
Well, it was so confusing, because I remember at the beginning they were like, oh, we're having a season in the fall, we just have to play with masks, so we're gonna keep practicing and we have a season. Then it's, oh, we're gonna do COVID tests and we're gonna play, and then all of a sudden it all gets shut down and it's like, we're gonna play in the spring. And even in the spring there were some complications where some teams didn't play. Season was cut short. For me, I mean, we still practiced. It was tough because of the COVID test and being kind of isolated and being by yourself all the time. But for me, it wasn't that big of a difference. I still was practicing, and then when the season came in the spring, I was in the bench ready to jump in if I was needed. And I don't know, COVID for me wasn't that tough. I guess it was also a smaller school, so the pandemic didn't hit us hard because it's easier to control less people than if you have 20,000 students that you have to control and make sure they don't do certain things. Like, since it's a small community, it didn't impact us as much. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely different, and I can say I'm one of the 6-year seniors that lived through COVID, so I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's a bit of a dying breed. I had Brady Rourke from football on last week. He's another one of those guys, a 6th-year tight end on football. It's like, you're not really going to see that anymore. And I mean, I saw in the news recently that the NCAA was interested in adding like a 5th year of eligibility, which would then forego redshirting. I don't know. It was complicated and didn't really make much sense, but I feel like that now we've become so accustomed to having these extra years of eligibility because of just things that were like seemed unfathomable a few years ago, that now we've been like this in this sort of state where it's normal to see guys playing for beyond the 4 years. So now I feel like the NCAA is trying to make that like a consistent thing, because just to keep that expectation of playing up. But interesting enough, though, I mean, you essentially you were a part of the squad for 2 years, didn't really have your first season until like 2021. You're academically like a junior, and that's when you finally start to be able to show your stuff, and you played very well. And so how, once you were able to assert yourself as that starting goalkeeper, really get a feel for just how the team is as one of the core parts of the team, how did that impact you as a player? How did that impact you as like a person, knowing that, all right, now I'd come out here to play soccer, I'm actually doing it now?
Well, I feel like having those 2 years, actually looking to the big picture, was really good for me, not only because it granted me another 2 extra years where I could get my master's, but also because I knew how the whole thing worked. I knew the players. I was close to them. I had enough of a voice where I could speak up instead of, if I'm a new kid being 18, going in goal. And that's kind of a big responsibility, and it's tough. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying it's harder to get the guys that are 23, some of the older guys, to listen to you. So I think me being there for 2 years and kind of see how the program worked, understand the coaches, understand my teammates, was really good for me to, when I had to step up, people knew who I was, people trusted me, and I could talk in the game, speak up after a game, speak up in halftime, and I was respected. And it was great. I think we did a great first year. We made a run in the tournament. So, yeah.
And so then just moving on from that, you spent another year there. You're continuing to assert yourself in this squad. When were the thoughts of moving on to a different program? When did that sort of start? Because I know that the reasons someone may want to transfer can vary. Could be from falling out with a coach, not enjoying the area, believing that they want another challenge, or injury, not being able to play, and so on and so forth. So just at what point, because it seemed that you had become a mainstay in goal for them, one of their key players, and was playing for a competitive program. So at what point did it click that you wanted to test out greener pastures?
So my last year, I broke my collarbone during the summer. They brought in another goalkeeper, and I didn't start the first 7 or 8 games because I was injured. I came into goal. It wasn't my greatest year, but I still did well. But then what happened is the team did well overall. Came short, but the individual performance were really good. So we lost a lot of good players. So we kind of had a rebuild on the team. And I wanted to do my master's. Like I said, I came here for my education as well as to play soccer. And I don't know if you know, but when you have to do your master's, the amount of grant you get it can not be from academics. It can only be for the sport you're playing. So I was having talks with my coach, and they were telling me, listen, we're gonna get so many players. Like, you can do another year of undergrad. We can do that, but we won't be able to pay for your masters. And for me, it seemed not very smart to go and do 2 more. I had 2 more years of eligibility, and I had the opportunity, thanks to me redshirting and not playing the first 2 years, to get a higher degree, to get a master's degree.
Yeah.
So that's what I wanted to do. So I had to talk with my coach. It was all great. Great guy. I still respect him to this day. But I told him, if that's what the situation is, I'm sorry, but I'm gonna have to look for another way to pursue my education as well as my soccer goals. So I decided to get in the portal. I got kind of late, and I ended up at URI.
And so then, how did that process go about? Like, who reached out to you? Was it Gio? Was it Coach Elliott? Was it Coach Bassett? And just like, how did that whole kind of conversation start?
So I think, at the transfer portal, I think it's a crazy thing because you understand more how college soccer works, and it's very hectic. It's very stressful because you're making a decision. Before, when I was in Spain, it wasn't that big of a deal because I didn't know anything. So I was like, whatever decision I make, it's fine. Like, I didn't really care that much.
Yeah.
But now that I know what's out there, I was like, okay, like, I'm getting, some of these schools are talking to me, sending me emails, promising me the world. But let's be realistic. Let's find a place where I can play, do well, fit in. And I think it was Gio that talked to me first, or Tony. I don't remember. I talked to all 3 of them, and that's one thing that I liked, is that they were showing a lot of interest. And for me, that was one of the most important things, is if you show interest, that means that you care to bring me in, so that makes me more willing to go play for you. But then also I saw URI, like, campus is beautiful, like, location is great. I also like to, the location is between Boston and New York. If I want to work in the future, it's in a great spot. You have the beach. It's a bigger school, so I wanted to see how it was. Campbell had like 5,000, 6,000 students. This one has like 20,000. So that's kind of the reasons. And still, East Coast still.
Yeah.
So that was, for me, I was like, last year they didn't do very good, or like the year before I came, they didn't do very good. But team that has won the A10 a couple times, team that's always been up there. I talked to my friend that was in St. Louis that played with me, Dio Konings. He was at Campbell, and he was in St. Louis, and I asked him, like, this school has reached out to me, like, how, like, talk to your guys, how is St. Louis in the A10? And he told me he's one of the better teams, that he's last year I think they beat St. Louis, and they were doing good. So I was like, okay, the soccer situation is always good. It's also good. Like, why not give it a shot? So.
Were there any other schools that you were talking to?
I talked to some big schools. I talked to Villanova. I remember talking to Portland. I remember talking to Greensboro. Talked to Coastal Carolina. I forget one that was big. The thing is, as a goalkeeper, it's and a grad student, it's tough for some schools to invest that kind of money on you, and because it's like, and I'm glad that now some schools are valuing more, and even in the professional levels, goalkeepers are getting paid more. Goalkeepers are getting bigger salaries, and they're valued more as a player. But some schools are not willing to spend all their money because it doesn't get you. What is the bang for your buck? Like, it's not like getting a striker. A striker's going to score 20 goals, and the goalkeeper is more of a quiet position, but it's also an important one. If you have a bad goalkeeper, it's going to hurt your team. So I think a lot of schools are realizing that, but it's also hard to kind of fight for that. Like, it's some negotiation is involved in that.
It reminds me a lot of, like, running backs in the NFL a little bit, where it's like, or at least the notion that owners and stuff have is like, all right, we can find someone that can do that same sort of job and not have to pay a premium for X, Y, and Z.
Exactly.
But it's like it's one of those things where it's like, I mean, we've seen it this season with your performances that earlier in the year, like against St. John's and in Harvard and so on, where it's like performances like that, like, you need really good goalkeepers sometimes, like to really bail you out. And it's something that goes unnoticed in the professional game. It goes unnoticed at almost all levels. And essentially too, being a grad student and a goalkeeper, like, the financial incentive to try and go after one, you're essentially paying for like a rental. Whereas, like, okay, we could then give scholarship money to like an 18-year-old who we could develop over the next 4 years. So it's interesting to see that because the game has evolved so much because like the transfer portal and the way that it's been over the past few years is like brand new. Like the stuff that you had just mentioned, I feel like wouldn't have even been like comparable 10 years ago.
100%.
If an athlete wanted to transfer or whatever, like those sorts of conversations where you're trying to work out if it's financially worth it to bring someone in like that over this, that, and whatever. Like I feel like that you wouldn't have seen those conversations happen at such a high volume before. But I mean, that's just kind of how sports are now. It's all a business at the end of the day. That's just what all college sports
and
are.
I think COVID made the transfer portal crazy because then you have all these players that have a fifth year that are so it probably was tough for a lot of freshmen coming in. Like, well, you're competing with probably all the athletes that actually want to take a fifth year, you're competing with them. And a lot of schools are like, well, let me get this guy that's been doing it great for 4 years instead of risking it with a high school player that you never know. It's a bet. So yeah, it's been the transfer portal. It's been crazy. I mean, it's helped me, but I understand it's been something crazy that now people have to deal with.
And so then after making the decision to come to Kingston, you join up with the squad. It's another example of you have to acclimate and become accustomed to this new team, new players, and so on. How much easier was this transition versus the one when you went to Campbell, considering that you have a better understanding of English now? There were a few Spanish players that were on the roster already, and you're already obviously older. You've become accustomed to American culture and everything.
I think it's a world of a difference. Like for me, coming to Campbell, coming to the U.S., I was so lost. Like some of the things I lived are so blurry because I just didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what was going on. Like if people were talking in the locker room, I didn't understand what was happening. Coming here, I first knew what college soccer was. I did it for 4 years. I understood people talking to me. I understood the dynamics of the program. So it wasn't very hard to adjust. The guys are great guys as well. Like we have a good people in this group. So they opened their arms to me. Like it was good. There's no complaints on that, and I don't think it was very hard. I think after a few weeks, I was already like part of the team. So.
And so then as you get through sort of the summer training sessions and everything, and then you get into your first season here, what's kind of your mindset going into your first season as a grad student with a new program, having already had your experiences at Campbell? Like, are you looking at it in more of like, you obviously want to win wherever you go, but are you looking at it more as like, all right, like I really want to win now, when you're going to a new team, knowing that the clock is almost ticking against you in a way?
Well, it's funny you say, like as a goalkeeper, I realized that you have a saying, and as a defensive player, I feel like you only have a saying in what the other team does. And what I've learned from the past years is just do your job. So do what's necessary for your team to not concede a goal, and worry about doing your job. And my job is also helping the guys do theirs and holding people accountable. But I think me being like, okay, and I think that's been a shift that I made as I gotten older. It's like, don't try to get too focused on what he's doing or what the team is doing. Is okay, what's your job? It's saving goals, or it's making those passes, or coming out for a cross. Do that. And do that to your best of your abilities. Know you're a good player. Know that you've been doing this for a while. Trust yourself. And that's what my mentality was. I said, if I do what I'm supposed to be doing and I do the right things, I show up to practice, I work every day, then it will take care of itself. Like I'm not thinking, oh, I should win, we should do that. I'm just going in there, playing my best, trying to get the ball out of the back of the net, and that's pretty much it.
Mentality must have taken a bit of a hit during your debut last year against Quinnipiac, huh?
Oh, yeah. That was, I mean, I don't think it can get worse than that as a debut. I was like, it happens. It's a decision you make. And it's what I told you, like you can have highs to highs and lows to lows. So whenever it was crazy because at first it was a PK, I think.
Yeah.
And then he overruled the PK and made it a foul. And I said, I told you, like, it was a foul. Thank you so much, like, for talking to the linesman. I gave him a hug. And then as I give him a hug, he's pushing me away. And he's like, no, buddy, you're out of here. So he gave me the red card. And my face, I wish you were there to take a picture because I couldn't believe it. But, I mean, Nate stepped up and the guys did great. I think we ended up tying 0-0 that game with 10 men. So I got bailed out, I guess. But
That was a very interesting game. I mean, yeah, for those at home, Edu's first ever game was away at Quinnipiac. It was a non-conference game at the end of August last year. He got sent off after 42 minutes in a very convoluted series of events, and that transpired over the course of 5 minutes. But then his backup, Nate DiLoretto, who was also a guest on the show last year, he stepped up, kept the shutout for the rest of the first half and the remainder of the second half. A nice little tandem showing from the two upperclassmen goalies, which I feel like was a pretty good indicator of what was to come from the two of you, because I feel like that from my position, having covered you guys as a journalist last year, and then now having moved on to working with you as a de facto part of the staff this year, I've come to realize that you and D'Lo really put together for like an impressive goalkeeping duo, and it's been, both of you have played exceptionally well over the past like 12 months.
well, I mean, I think don't leave Caleb out there.
And Caleb too.
Exactly.
Caleb, I love you. Don't worry about it. Caleb, you're in this too.
Yeah, I think the goalkeepers, we have a great group. I think if like you show up to practice and you see as an outsider, like there's some practices that are really high level, and I think it's great because it makes me be better, and it makes all these guys push to kind of try to take my spot. But I guess that's what you sign up for when you join a team as a goalkeeper. But it's great. We push each other. Nate's great, and I think Caleb has a lot of years to come, and he's been doing great also when he stepped up. So we got a good group. Will, for now, he's just shagging balls for us because his knees, it's all messed up. But I mean, he looks okay when he throws the ball and stuff. So hopefully he can step up as well. I don't know, like people-wise, I think we have a great group. So, and player-wise as well, Nate has shown he stepped up. Caleb played last year. I think it was against UConn. He had a massive
that save against UConn was awesome. Yes.
So goalkeeper-wise, I think this program is in good hands.
And so kind of just going off of like that, the goalkeeping group, having 3 competitive goalkeepers on the roster is a dream for any team, because the more depth you have, the better, and to be able to call on different players for different things is huge. And so, but in your particular case with you and Nate, both being upperclassmen, both vying for a starting job and so on, and both of you competing and being close friends as it is, how do you feel that level of competition where you both are competing for spots and working together during practices, how do you feel that improves your ability on the pitch, knowing that you constantly have strong competition that's working with you, but then almost in a sense like kind of not working against you, but like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I love competing. Like I like winning and losing. Like I think that thing of participating, I don't care about that. I like when you do something, there's a winner and a loser, and I always try to win. So I think it's great. It's so nice when like that I can't sleep. Like I go to practice and then one day I'm doing bad and I see Nate doing well and I'm like, oh, like I have to step up. Or like even Caleb, like we're playing small side and he's making amazing saves and I'm like, okay, well I have to, like, although you could say that it's more about games than practice. Like if you see the second goalkeeper is making all those saves in practice and your starting goalie is like looking like I don't know, like out of place, you're like, okay, people are gonna start questioning. So I love the competition, and I think it's great when a program has 3 goalkeepers that could potentially like play minutes and start for the team.
And just looking back at last year, ultimately not successful in terms of hunting for the playoffs, but still a relatively good year in defense and for the goalkeepers overall. Do you have any moments that you look back on in your first year that you're like, yeah, we may not have gotten to where we wanted to at the end of the year, but that was really cool. I am particularly proud of that.
Yeah, there's some good moments. Definitely. The thing is, the season, I feel like we fell short to a lot of expectations. We finished 9th, I think, and 8th make playoffs, so that kind of like tainted everything. But there were some good moments, and then some moments we've been building from last year. I think this team has shown a lot of grit, like you're talking about defensively. Like keeping a clean sheet is not only the goalkeepers that do it, it's a whole defensive effort. So I think we had like 6 or 7 or 9 last year. We had a lot of clean sheets. That was pretty cool. Then against Providence, we were playing at home with a lot of fans in there, and we were playing with 10 for like almost the whole game, and it ended tragically with a corner kick. But I think those kind of games are things you look back to like moving forward, and you're like, wow, we did good. I think the season, if it wasn't for those 2 games that were Dayton and Bryant, could have gone a lot different. But I mean, you can't change the past, so learn from it, and hopefully it does never happen again ever in my life. But
yeah, I remember that I had, the first men's soccer show that I did was rough. That was the week after the Dayton game.
Yeah, no.
That was, he was not happy.
Yeah.
But taking that as it was, difficult position to be in, difficult position for you, being the goalkeeper that's at the last line of defense, the goal is flying in past you. I mean, it can obviously be demoralizing. One job is to keep the ball out of the net. Ball goes past you 10 times in 2 games. Not fun. And but just when you look back at those sorts of games, you obviously want to build on them. But how, like, when you look back on them, how do you personally view them? And given like how times have changed and where you've evolved as like a person and a player, when you look back at results like that, like how do you interpret them?
Well, I mean, I just think it's kind of like when you take one of a building block of a house and it kind of all crumbles down. I think it's how it was for us. They score, like, we started off terrible against Dayton, and it was all it took is for them to score a goal to kind of open the can and just start hammering on us. What I've learned from it and what I think shouldn't happen again is whenever you concede a goal, whenever the team is not doing great, and for me as a player, whenever I make a mistake or whenever something happens, is just forget about it fast. Forget about it quick. Don't dwell too much on it. Don't think, oh, I should have done this or I could have done that. Just don't think you're the worst team ever for losing a game 6-0, and don't think you're the best team ever for being undefeated right now.
Yeah.
And that's, I'm big on that. I'm big on, okay, you lost 6-0, next game. And I think last year we didn't do that very well because the next game we lost again. But I think it's one thing is mentality has to stay very in the middle. So don't think you're the worst team in the nation because you just lost 6-0, and don't think you're the best team in the nation because you just beat a ranked opponent. And I think that's a mentality that could help us moving on in the future.
Yeah, that was kind of what I was going to jump into, was you have 2 difficult games in Bryant and Dayton, but then later in the year you go on and get a shutout win at home versus Fordham, who was a top 25 team at the time. And my question was going to be kind of like, how do you use that as like a basis of like, okay, we are a capable team. That was just not our day. Is that like, you obviously just touched on my, like, you don't want to like look at them either, like just be like, you're not bad if you lose like that, but you're not great if you win, like those sort of games. But in the moment, is it difficult to like not think like that?
Oh, it's so hard. I mean, I think that is the hardest thing because you lose a game, no one's happy. And like, it's not that you just lost, it's that you got exposed on television. Like, people are texting you like, what the hell happened? And you don't know what to answer because it's like, well, if I knew the answer, it won't, like, it shouldn't have happened again. But yeah. I don't really know what happened. But it's, you can't focus too much on that because it's like a 1-off or a 2-off, whatever. Like, you have to trust in the ability you have as a team to compete every game. So if you focus too much on that, it's never going to end well. Like, I think whatever you think about has a lot of impact on how you perform. So if you're thinking, oh, damn, we just played Dayton and we lost 6-0, and we're playing this team now, and oh my God, they're so good, then I think you get into a rabbit hole where you don't have any confidence in yourself. And I mean, confidence comes from preparation, and I think we train every day to get prepared and to be ready for a game. The fact that you lost 6-0 doesn't mean you're going to lose 6-0 every game, or doesn't mean you're going to lose every game. So I think that's how I try to look at it. Obviously, in the moment, it's tough when they keep shagging balls from the back of the net.
Yeah.
You're like, I just want to go home. But yeah, no, it's definitely tough. Definitely good learning experience, though.
And Coach Elliott made a good comment today that I enjoyed, because you guys are heading down to VCU to open Atlantic 10 conference play this week. You're playing on Friday. And Coach Elliott at practice today said to the entire team, it's record 0-0.
Yes.
Like, it's conference, right? Everyone in the conference is 0-0. It doesn't matter if they're 6-0, 0-6. Like, it does not matter. And right now, you guys are 4-0-2. You're undefeated. 4 wins, 2 draws. But you're going into conference play, and conference play is a different animal. Like, the Atlantic 10 is a very competitive conference. You've seen that firsthand. You've got friends that play on other teams. Like, it's you can tell how intense the teams in this league are. Mm-hmm. How, when you're looking ahead to VCU and then just for the rest of the season in general, based off of what you had accomplished last year and the teams that you faced and just how the style of play was and what you witnessed, how have you used that for yourself, and how do you feel your teammates and yourself are using those experiences to prepare to take on conference play again?
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's what you said, 0-0. Whatever you did before doesn't matter. Every game is a battle. You play 90 minutes, and I like this quote. I forgot who said it. I don't know the name. It's Michael Jordan's and Kobe Bryant's quote. He says, "Winning has no loyalty." So it doesn't matter. Right now, VCU is ranked 15 in the nation, and we're getting some votes, whatever it might be. But at the end of the day, you play 90 minutes, and whoever plays the best for those 90 minutes, or whoever gets the most lucky, or whatever you want to call it, is going to win. So you got to earn the right to come home with a result every time you go out there. So for me, that we are undefeated or that we are this doesn't really matter. When you come into a game, you can think that opponent it's less, or you can think that opponent's more than they are. There's 90 minutes, and you got to prove why you deserve to win. And I think that's the mentality that the team has is, okay, well, we're playing against this team. They're doing really good. We're doing okay. So let's play 90 minutes, and let's see who comes home with a W.
It seems like you're not one for the top 25 rankings in some of these sports and so on. And I mean, I can't imagine you would be. I don't think there's really a comparable equivalent for sports out in Europe, since it's all just like based on table and results and so on. Like, you don't have these voted rankings that you do in American sports. And actually, it's a fair question to ask was that at all weird to you when you came over and saw that for the first time? Just see how different the way that people perceive good teams in the United States?
Yeah, I think it's cool because it gives it gives some teams like a portal or like a place where they can be seen. Like, if you win a big game or having good performances, people can be like, even if you're not in a big conference, people can be like, okay, this team is ranked right now. But I also think you have to take it with a grain of salt, because college soccer, I feel like it's so even. Like, even the biggest team can lose to the smallest team. You could see CCSU were doing some great, and then we tied against them.
Yeah.
And you see Holy Cross be tied against Clemson. So I think the margins are so tight that maybe a team that's ranked top 10 is not that far from the team that's ranked top 50. So it is definitely interesting, and I love how American people love to make a show and love to have the numbers and have I think it's cool. I missed, for example, the overtime rule where you had the golden goal and whoever scored. I think that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. In Spain or in Europe, I feel like a sport is about the sport. In the US, a lot is about making a show, like showing, I don't know, like all this top 25, Sports Center, and all that, Player of the Week, all that stuff. It's cool, but it's definitely different than what I'm used to.
From a player perspective, do you think that that's beneficial in getting more eyes on it, or do you think that it's an unnecessary distraction?
I think it can be both. I think it's a double-edged sword. I think for some people it can be beneficial, but for some people it might make them get carried away and be like, oh, I want to be the defensive player, or I want to get ranked in the top 25, when at the end of the day what matters is if you win games or if you score goals or if you save them. So I think it depends on how you are as a person. It can distract you a lot. I've had teammates that all they wanted to do is to score a goal, to run to the camera and do whatever celebration they wanted. But I mean, as long as if that's your goal and it keeps you motivated and you play well with it, man, whatever gets you going.
I mean, be honest though, A10 Defensive Player of the Week for one of the first weeks of this season. Yeah. That felt good, didn't it?
Yeah, it felt good. But like I said, you have to. It's a long. It sounds very cliche, right? But it's a long season. Like, I'd rather win the A10 and get zero recognition than getting a Defensive Player of the Week on the first week and then just fall short again. So it's cool, obviously, to see your name in there and like getting recognized. Like it's appreciated, but like it sounds very cliche, but I trust me, I would rather see the team win, and because if the team wins, it means we're all doing good, and like you're gonna be on the spotlight anyways. So.
I wouldn't say that that's a cliche. I'd say it's more like a good mentality to have, and you want to win. Like you want to win. Like it's not individualistic. Like there's no I in team. Like this is a team sport at the end of the day. So you want the accolades are cool, but you want to still get the success at the end of the line.
And you being part of the team makes you look good. If your team's winning and you're doing good and you're like, you win the A10, like, then that's when you can talk about, okay, he's been the best striker in the A10, or he's been the best defensive player. But right now, I'd much rather make the playoffs thing, and then you can give me all the awards. But
all right, so we're kind of running out of time here, but I do want to touch on this before we finish. You're graduating in December.
Yes.
Completing your master's. You were finished.
Yep.
And once this season kind of comes to an end, we were talking a little bit about it before, but I'm just kind of curious, what are your sort of plans? Because as an international student, once you finish college, like it's a weird sort of situation where you find yourself. It's, do you go back to Spain? Do you stay in the United States? Do you stay until your visa expires? Like, do you try to work here? Like, what's your thought process on that? Like, what have you been trying to figure out?
So that's one of the things that has been stressing me the most. Obviously, I would love to stay here, whether it's working, whether it's playing. It's very hard for internationals to stay in the U.S. You need a visa in order to stay, and companies are hesitant to give you a visa being international because it's not only because it's hard for them to convince the U.S. that, okay, this guy that's from Spain has some qualities that some Americans don't have.
Yeah.
And a lot of the companies, you have your OPT, which is you get a year after you finish your degree, and a lot of companies are even hesitant to hire people for OPT because it's like, okay, we're training you for a year, and then, all right, what are we going to do after you got to leave? Like, are we going to sponsor you? We're going to have to spend resources on you. So it's tough. Then if I have to go back to Spain, I'll probably work. I've considered playing a lot of times, but I'm 23 years old. I'm also thinking of what's best for my future. I could play. I'm always going to play, even if it's just Sunday league. Like, I love playing the game. But it's definitely going to be tough the moment I have to hang my gloves. But I just want to do what's best for me. If it's playing here, if it's playing in Europe, I'll do that. If it's working for a company here, I'll work here. But I don't know. I like the U.S. I like the mentality. I like the opportunities that there is here, and I would love to stay, but it's been a grind. So if anyone is hiring or looks for a goalkeeper for next year, Edu Rodriguez, you can look me up at LinkedIn, Instagram, whatever you want. I'm here.
Yeah, I'll be sure to plug all of that once I publish this episode. But I mean, oh man, now you're kind of getting me sad. I'm not looking forward to senior night because there's so many seniors graduating this year. It's so upsetting.
Yeah, it's gonna be a long senior night with all the people coming in.
Well, thankfully, at least I'm a senior too. So like, it's not
you'll get your senior night. We'll take the camera off you and get a little framed picture of you taking a picture.
That'd be awesome. But Edu, thank you for taking the time to sit with me. This has been awesome. I have heard all of your stories, and I hope to hear so many more. And I'm happy that you wanted to come on and could share all of this with the URI community, because I feel like that, again, the international students at URI are so interesting. They have all of these such intricate stories about how they got here, how they ended up in Rhode Island, one of the smallest states in the U.S. And it's just so cool to see you guys and to see the athletic community turn into this microcosm, this like melting pot of so many different cultures and so on. But I mean, just like, thank you for taking the time to come on and speak with me. This was great.
I mean, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure. This was great. So thank you very much.
And to everybody listening at home, thank you for listening. As always, your support is just immense, and I'm so grateful for it, so thank you. Stay tuned on socials, Marks or Marks Pod on Instagram and Twitter. As always, stay tuned for updates, show updates every week and so on. Some cool stuff I've got lined up with some other sports, maybe some other stuff outside of URI, but I will leave that for you guys all to find out soon. So in the meantime, that's it for now, and we'll catch you all in the next one.